G'day guys, Cam back here at the Battler Workshop. Well, we finally finished the clean-up work on that powered lathe slotter. So we've got the guard done, we've got the height indicator done, and we've just finished off the lifting rig to be able to lift that in and out of the lathe. A lot easier than trying to carry it because it has got a little bit of weight around it. I've got a number of projects that I was looking at to get on the go, and I think the next one we'll do, and it's something I've been missing, is an old 6-inch offset Dawn vise that I acquired out of a scrap bin. It was destined for recycling, but we're going to try and recycle it and put it back into its original purpose. But she's pretty roached out. It's had a pretty hard life, and it's got an awful lot of battle scarring over it. So we're going to do a restoration on that. And I know there's been a lot of vise restorations going on, and this one's probably going to be no different. But I am going to try something a little bit different. That is, I'm going to make up new jaws for it. The jaws on it, the serrations have totally gone. There's nothing left of those, although the jaws are still hard. But we're going to make up a new set of jaws with the new knurling, and I've been looking at ways that I can do that knurling with the gear that I've got in my workshop. So you blokes who've left comments that I'm a butcher and I'm probably better off working in a kitchen than in a machine shop, you are going to absolutely get floored and disgusted with what I'm going to try and do with my milling machine to set up a knurling tool to actually knurl that flat bar before we carburise it and heat treat it. So I don't know if this is going to work. It's just an idea that I've got in my mind that I'm going to try, and it could end up as an absolute disaster, but we'll go ahead and give that a go. Obviously it may need a new screw, and I'm pretty sure it's going to need a new nut as well, so we've got a little bit of machining to do on that as well. And some of the old battle scars over it's got an awful lot of grind marks, cut marks in it, so whether I run a Eutictoid rod over that and grind that back flush, or whether I just leave them as they are, we'll see how it pans out. I don't want to go and bog it up, because I'm probably going to use oxy torches and give it a bit of a beating as well, and I don't want the bog all falling out. It's going to look pretty atrocious if that happens. So, as I said, if we can weld it up with some Eutictoid rods, we'll do that, and if not, we'll just leave it as it is. As I said, it's a Dawn vise. It's a 125mm or a 5-inch offset vise. Dawn Australia started operations in Australia, I believe, in around about 1917, so they've been going an awful long while. And as far as Australian-made vices go, they're the premium. They're very, very robust. I can remember right through my apprenticeship and even right through my technical school, all the vices that we had in the workshops where I've worked have all been Dawn vices. And I've actually got a 6-inch Dawn vise, a woodwork vise, which has got a big old buttress through that I restored a few years ago and put on one of my woodwork benches. So that's the plan at the moment. We'll get in to do this restoration, and we'll get it mounted up on my old welding table, and we'll have a very usable vise at the end of it. So a little bit of mud to get through before we get there, but we'll see how we go, and stay tuned as to what I do to my milling machine with the head to try and knurl these vise jaws. Alright guys, we'll get into it, and we'll see you in a tick. Alright guys, I've just set this knurling tool up in the lathe. I just want to have a look at what the pattern looks like when it's knurled out. So I've just got a bit of aluminium stock in here. Obviously this is one of the jaws we've got, and you can see it's a very, very light pattern in there at the moment, if you can pick that up. So that's what we need to replicate in our new jaws. So this is going to be set up in the milling machine. I've got a technique that I'm going to try with this. I haven't seen this used anywhere. I've looked all over the net, all over YouTube, to see if anyone has actually used this technique to create a knurl on flat bar using the milling machine. I can't find anywhere, so maybe a first, who knows. Alright, let's just kick it off, and we'll see what sort of a pattern we get. I'm hoping to get a fairly coarse pattern. This is the coarsest set of knurls that I could get, well, off eBay anyway. So we'll give it a go, and we'll see what she comes up like. That looks really good, actually. That looks really good. I might just take one more pass on that.
Alright, we'll get you up a little bit closer, we can have a look at that. Right, hopefully you can see that's quite a coarse diamond knurl in that. That's quite a nice pattern. I think that's going to do really well for the jaws. Now I've had to put a fair bit of pressure on this, even though it's aluminium. I've had to put a bit of pressure on this, so I am going to be lighting the mill up doing this in the way that I'm thinking about doing this. So if I find it's going to be too much, I'm going to pull a pin on it. But we'll give it a go, and we'll see if it's going to work. As I said, I haven't seen anybody on the internet try this technique before, or come up with a technique like this. So as I said, it may be a first. All right, guys, we'll go and get this this vise stripped down, and we'll see what damage we're up for. All right, guys, we'll see you soon. All right, guys, here's the old girl here. I've got the vise jaws out of her. These bolts were just totally rusted and had to use wedges just to get these to get this apart. But we got there. It was a bit of an effort. We got them out. I want to take the front half of the vise off and just have a look at the condition. We'll get some specifications of what the screw is and what the nut is, so I can get some drawings organised for that. It turns about 3 times before it actually starts engaging in it, so she's pretty cactus. So we'll have a look at what we can do there. So what's the plan? As I said, we're going to make up a new nut and a new screw. It's got a lot of battle damage all over her from grinding marks. You can see it's been gashed out a lot of places all over. Whether I get some Eutectoid rods and I fill them up and then grind them back, or if I just leave it as it is. I don't really want to put any sort of bog material over this because it's going to have oxy torches and all sorts of things on it as well. So I want to try and make that as robust as I can. As I said, it may be easier just to level the battle scars on him. I'm going to set this up once we've got the new screw and the nut made. Set this up in the milling machine. I want to remachine the vice jaw locations. They're really badly corroded out. Really badly corroded out. So I want to give them a new face to go up onto. And as I mentioned before, we're going to do something fairly unusual to create the knurls on these jaws. So we'll see how we go with that. All right, let's start getting into the pieces and let's see what we're up for. I've got a close-up view of this, but this looks like an Acme thread in there. It's been turned into a buttress thread, so yeah, bit of wear in that. Tell you what, the tips of those threads, they look like razor blades. There is not an awful lot left in that at all. This is cast iron too, by the look of it. So we're going to have to replicate that in a new unit. Right, we'll get the rest of this apart and we'll have a better look at it. And we'll see where we're going with it. Well, just looking at it, this looks like, I thought it was a buttress thread, but it's actually just grease that's jammed in there. So we'll see what that cleans up like. That may not be in bad condition, that screw. Certainly the nut is just toast. That's just badly worn out. As you can see, hopefully you can see that those threads down in there look like razor blades. Not much left at all. We can see a lot of the grinding damage that's been done on him. Over the jaws, she's been pretty badly butchered up, this old girl. And same with the movable vise, you can see all the grind marks over it. She's and all the arc strike marks on it. She's certainly been through some battles. But we'll try and bring her up. Won't be as good as new, but at It'll be a very usable unit once we've got him done. Alright guys, we'll get the screw stripped out of this and we'll get it cleaned up and we'll just see what sort of condition that is in. As I said, we've got to try and find a bit of stock. Now whether I do this out of cast iron again, if I get some cast iron stock, or if I can get some bronze stock. It's going to be a fairly big bit of bronze to do that one though, but I'll see what I can get my hands on and what we've got to work with. These are the times it'd be great to have my foundry up and going again, because it'll take no time to cast up a couple of these ready to go. Alright guys, we'll see you in a little while. Right, let's see if we can get the old girl apart. So we've got this offset pin that's gone in, so we'll try and get that straightened up first. I reckon this is going to be pretty stubborn. Let's see how we go. I might have to get a little bit creative with this. Righto, that's our screw out. I'm going to go and give this a clean up, and let's just see what condition that screw's in. But just looking at it, it doesn't look too bad, but let's get it cleaned up and we'll have a better look. If we can save this, I like to try and keep the original parts intact if possible, and we'll see how this cleans up, and we'll give it some measures and we'll just see what it looks like if we can reuse this. Alright guys, I'll go and clean up and we'll be back in a tick. Alright guys, we've got this screw now cleaned up, and very little wear, believe it or not. Very, very surprising. I'm sort of measuring around about 0.1 of a mil, so I think we'll keep this in play. As you can see, the handle's pretty knocked around, so we will replace that. Clean up all the burrs. The nut I've cleaned up, and what I was looking at possibly doing was boring this out, putting a bronze sleeve in there and then recutting it, but yeah, we're not going to have enough meat on the sides here to be able to do that, so we're going to have to make up a new nut. And I've got a big chunk of LE bronze here that we're going to use to make that nut up with. So we've got enough material to get the nut out of that. By the time we drop that down into here, we'll have enough meat to clean this little spigot up. Now these little spigots that are on the nuts, they don't take any thrust load. The thrust load is taken up by casting inside the anvil part of the vise, so it pushes up against there as it's being torqued up to hold something in the vise. The only time this comes into play is when it gets backed off, and the tongue then takes a tensile load, I should say a shear load on that. But basically it just sits in there as a torque arm to stop the nut from rotating around. You see it's got the numbers 5 and 6, so I'm assuming that's for the 5-inch and the 6-inch. Now you can buy these parts. I haven't worried about pricing them up because I think it'll be a good project to do in the workshop here to make up a new nut. The moving jaw and the fixed jaw, or the anvil as I call them, I think we'll get this sandblasted and get that cleaned up to see what we're actually dealing with there. So I'll get that to some sandblasters and we'll get that tidied up. In the meantime, I'll draw this nut up and we'll see if we can make up a new one out of this LE bronze offcut that I've got here. I'm not looking forward to machining this stuff. LE bronze is very, very, very hard stuff. Very hard stuff. This was an old slipper liner designed to take immense pressures. Hence the reason it's an LE bronze. All right. As I said, we'll get this measured up. We'll see what we can get out of this to make up our new nut. and we'll make a start. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. All right, guys. So we're outside again. You can see I've had the castings all sandblasted. As a matter of fact, they're starting to get a bit of a rust film on them already, so I'll have to get some coatings onto that to protect them. But I wanted to show you up inside here where the little protrusion comes out of that nut to sit in here, that little torque arm. And up inside there you can see an awful lot of dirt coming out. Now that dirt isn't from use. That dirt is actually core sand that's used to produce that little tiny cavity. And I'll show you an example of where that had gone pear-shaped on my little CNC lathe and what it did. So this is my little CNC lathe. Now up inside this headstock here, the cavity is created by what we call a core, and that's got all sorts of little apertures off it. It creates that internal cavity shape. And most of the core sand for this was actually still in place, and all they'd done is sprayed some orange spray paint over it to try and bind it into place. But what had happened is a lot of that core sand had come adrift and actually ended up inside the taper roller bearings and chewed them out rather rapidly. So I stripped it down and got it all sandblasted to get it all out, and then repainted it to make sure it had no more core sand inside. So I might do a description on this little CNC lathe at some stage, but I've done quite a lot of modifications to it. I've done castings and extended out the saddle so that I can set up gang tooling on it. Ball screws all through it, and she's driven with little stepper motors, little stepper drives for the Z-axis and the Y-axis. So yeah, if you do have a Chinese lathe, and I suggest before you run it you actually pop the top off and have a look inside to make sure you've got no core sand inside that's going to chew out your gears or your bearings. Righto, so I've done my quick little drawing here as to what we're going to be machining up. It's quite a bit different than what the original nut is. This nut looks like it was a one-piece pattern. You can see the way the taper has been put on this, so it looks like it was drawn out of the sand in this way. So we don't need to put all that taper on. The rounding, I'm just going to put 45s on the side, and we'll make it a bit more blocky, a bit more easier to machine up. So as I said, that's our bit of stock we're going to use, and I've just made up a little template, 1-to-1, and looking at that, we're going to have to fit it something like that. By the time we get down to this curve bit here, we're down below. You see, it's a bit hard to see on the camera, but we're right below that. That spigot comes in around about here, so we should get that cleaned up quite nicely. So that's roughly the shape we're going to have. So I'm just going to mark that out, set that up in the bandsaw, cut that, and we'll start machining and getting it squared up. It's going to be interesting to see how long this blade lasts. Anyway, we might time it and see how long that takes to cut that little bit of a shape out. Alright, we'll come back when we're getting close to the end. Righto, we're just up to the 45-minute mark now. I've put an extra couple of weights on this to try and get the cut through a bit faster. But it's yeah, very, very hard stuff, LE bonds. Probably got another 10-15 minutes, I reckon. Well, I had to finish cutting this by hand. The saw blade was starting to really wander off to one side, and I was a bit worried it was going to break, so I took it out and I finished the cut by hand. I've got this mounted in the vise, so I'm not real happy with the way this is holding. It is up firm, but I'm just going to take it very easy. And it'll be interesting to see how long the carbides last on this stuff. Alright, we'll give it a go.
two faces machined up, nice and parallel. Just need to mark out for our little template now. I'm going to put some Dicam on first, some Dicam blue. And I'll tell you what, this stuff is very, very hard to get into Australia. There's all sorts of import implications with it. I found one company out of the dozens that I tried that would import it, and they were only able to import one bottle at a time. So what I've got is going to last me a lifetime. Now, we only have to do this fairly roughly. This doesn't have to be exact. Just going to mark a couple of little lines here. Oh, it's sort of about there-ish, I think. At least that'll give us a couple of faces that we can start getting some things squared up. It gives us a little bit of meat on each side. And as I said, I'm hoping that this, when we get it into play, and it comes into down here, that's going to give us enough meat. I think it will. All right, we'll get that set up in the vise, and we'll start knocking some material off. Alright, so we've just got our line nice and parallel here. You can see we've got a mountain of material that we need to remove off here, so we'll just knock this off very, very slowly. At least I'm happy now it's in the jaw a lot better. Well guys, we've got this squared up and blocked out now, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this down to size. I'm going to work around all these different shapes here to try and get that shape finalised out on it, but we've got enough meat there to play with, so got a fair bit to come off the lid here. To take off the top there, a little bit more to take off the side here, and obviously some work to do down here to get our shapes put into here. So we'll see how we go. I'm thinking with these radiuses here, I might just try and 45 those back a bit. For what this is, I don't think that's going to be an issue for me. So I'll hop back on the mill and I'll start to we'll get this all to size, and then we'll see what we've got to work with. At the moment, it's pretty much dead on square. I've checked it all over, so I'm happy with that. Compared to what we started out with, the sides that I have machined are dead square to each other. Alright, we'll get this back in the mill and we'll get everything down to the size, and then we'll start getting some shape into it. Right guys, I'm going to drill through for the root diameter on the internal thread that we've got to put on this nut. I'm not going to drill all the way down. I'm going to leave about 5 mil shy at the bottom there. The numbers work out at around about 19 mil or 3/4 of an inch on the ID, or the root diameter of the thread. So I'll come a little bit shy of that, so that I've got something to clock up in the lathe. I've set up this orientation this way so the tongue is down, so I've got maximum engagement in the jaws when I do set this up in the lathe to final bore and start to cut the thread. So we'll get set up, we'll get started, and we'll get this this pre-pilot hole put through, ready to go. This pilot hole that we're going to put through, I'll come out to about 15 mil in diameter. I'm also going to use as a hole down point, because I'm going to look at cutting the radius on these on the rotary table, and I need something to be able to hold that down to the table, and then I'll block in around it. All right, we'll get on the go. For these larger type of drills, I prefer to use the collets. If I go with these keyless chucks, if this grabs in any way, shape or form, it jams very, very hard into these jaws, and it is extremely hard to get these shanks out. Matter of fact, you've got to sit there with a pair of Stilsons to try and wrench the thing out. So avoid that issue. I use the collet chucks, the 32s. Also, we've all had the frights drilling into bronze, where it will grab and then drag the part out, or pull the quill down. So I tend to not try and pilot drill. I try and go through my full size and try and get the pressure on it. It won't be so bad with this stuff. It's reasonably hard. The softer bronzes, you may have to take the edge off your leading edges there. Just blunt them back a little bit so that you've got to apply pressure to get the drill in, and it's not going to try and force feed itself through or grab itself and pull itself in. Righto, let's get this on the go. What's that? Right, I'll set up the boring head to give us a nice register. Righto, now we have a nice true bore to clock up to in the forge jaw. Righto guys, I've decided to machine a radius on this tongue to match what was existing. Fairly simple. I've just set up my my rotary table, clocked it up and centered it. I've marked out our tongue with a center point, and I've got that centered up around the axis. I've just got a bit of 1/2 inch round bar just poking in through that little hole that we'd pre-drilled and bored, and I've just set up a wedge type arrangement so that there's no way in the world that can move around while we're machining. So I've just got a little 1/2 inch carbide end mill in there. It's getting quite blunt now, but it should get us through this one. All right, let's get into it, and we'll knock this off.
Right guys, I reckon that has come up. I couldn't have made that any better. That's perfect radius there. Just touched on the corners and just touched on the tip, so we're spot on centre with that one. Alright, we'll get this rotary table off. We'll put our vise back up again. And I want to put the 45-degree features in here. The reason I didn't put them in here already was because I wanted to have the maximum amount of face contact on the table that I could. So now we've got that, we'll set up the vise again and we'll get those 45s cut in. And I've also got to cut a small arris just on the back of this as well. So we'll do that. We'll do that now, and then we'll get set up in a lathe to do some screw cutting. Righto guys, just a couple of little mods I'm going to make. When I made this nut, this tongue, I made this 2mm longer just to try it in the cavity that's on the fixed jaw to see how it fitted up. But it does bottom out, so I have taken the 2mm off and brought it back to the same as what the original one was. On closer looking, that core print in there is actually tapered, so it's not a straight sided core print, so hence the reason that is tapered. I thought that might have been for another reason, but it is tapered now that I've knocked all the sand out of it, so it's about a 7.5-degree taper. So we'll set that up and we'll pop that little taper onto there. And on the back here, I'm probably going to have to hand file that to blend that in to give that little taper, and we'll see how it fits. So we've got a taper to cut on that tongue, and we've got a couple of 45 degrees to do on that top edge. All right, we'll get set up and we'll get those angles cut in. All right, guys, I'm going to set up the 45s first on the top edge, and the way I do those is I've got this little Wixley digital angle gauge, and they're accurate within 0.1 of a mil, which is miles close enough for what we need to do with this sort of stuff. You don't need to go and get sine bar set up for it. So I just zeroed out on my table because my table is not exactly spot on. So you just zero the Wixley gauge out on your table, and then we move it up to the part, and we just gently knock that until we get it at exactly 45 degrees. Now, obviously the bronzes are magnetic, but you know, the steels are a lot easier to go with. So we get that set on there. And that gets us pretty close to the 45, and then we can start knocking that out. So if these are the angles on the tongue, we set it up at 7.6 degrees, and we'll lick that back to 0 in the corner. Righto, so that's our nut so far. I've just tried fitting it up. It's just a little bit shy on what this one here is, so I think I'm just going to have to do a little hand file around there just to get that to fit up just a little bit better. I may leave that till last. I wait until I've got the thread cut and I've got everything fitted up, and we'll see how the nut fits as it is now. But as I said, we've got that up our sleeves. We can take a little bit off that radius and taper him back a bit. But no, very happy with how that's come up. That's the bee's knees. All right, I've just got that little arris I need to cut across the back there to match the arris that I've got on that bloke. I don't know what the purpose of it is, but it's got the 5 and 6 stamped in there. But we'll put it in and match it up. And then we'll set that up into the lathe, bore our hole through, and then we'll start cutting this Acme thread and see how we go. So far so good. Alright guys, I'll catch you soon.